Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Leeds United news show. And we've got a few bits to get into today. We've got an update regarding Jack Harrison potentially leaving the football club and joining Valencia, of course, joining Carlos Carvalho at Valencia. So talk about that. We're also going to talk about Axel Disasi and a potential Disasi transfer to Leeds United too. That is a story that is going round at this moment in time as well, so we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk regarding Daniel Farke's press conference, but mainly a lot of that will go in the show tomorrow when we talk all about Leeds United versus Liverpool, the Liverpool game. I was going to do it today, but truthfully, there's a lot of news today, so I've swapped them. So we've got a new show today and then the Liverpool stuff tomorrow, and we'll talk all about his press conference in more detail in that. But one thing I do want to talk about is about the Joe Rodon injury, because that's not as much about Liverpool and more just generic news in terms of he is out for 3 weeks. What's the impact of obviously Leeds United on with that situation occurring? Well, let's get into it. Of course, as well, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff massively helps the channel and helps me because I'm a smaller content creator. Massively helps it boost, etc. You get the idea. Anyway, so if you could do that, that would be brilliant. But let's start as with the man on the right-hand side of the screen, as you can see there on the other side, Jack Harrison. What do I think of this? Well, I'm pleased for Jack Harrison because I've got to be honest, it's just not working at Leeds United at this moment. I know Daniel Farke gave us the whole scenario in the summer of, oh, it's fantastic that Jack Harrison's coming back potentially and it's all fantastic and we want him here and all that. I never felt that was a situation with Jack Harrison. I always felt the reason that he was still at the football club was more because we couldn't find a buyer and we know he's on massive money. I thought that was more of the reason for Jack Harrison staying at the football club. And as I said, because it wasn't sort of because there was loads of interest and Leeds United wanted to keep him. And it's nice now that he's probably going to find potentially a home with Carlos Carvalho, of course, under Bielsa and where he came through with Valencia. And I think it suits him. I think it suits him down to the ground. I'm hoping we can get a marginal transfer fee. I'm not expecting much, though. There isn't massively much talk in the Marca article about the price point of Jack Harrison. But fundamentally, I don't think he's involved in this system. We don't even play with wingers at this moment in time. Massive when we play 3-5-2. It's more with wing backs and two up front. So I don't even know where he fits in that. And I think he's made one start for us all season, which was obviously that disastrous game. Not for Jack Harrison, but in general away at Burnley. But he's just not at the level anymore. And it's a bit of a shame because he has... I know he's come back and he's come back in bad faith because of all the stuff that happened at Everton. But he's a player that actually was in a fantastic time for Leeds United, and it was a fantastic player for us in terms of Leeds United in general. Apologies as well, I can't fully see the chat. I might have to get it up on my phone. Jack says, evening, Scott. Evening to you too, Jack. But I can't fully see it, so we might have to skip the chat liveness tonight. It's like lagging on my screen. I'm not sure why. Also, apologies, by the way, today. Today's been an absolute mess in terms of I've been playing golf all day. That went on for absolutely ages. Came back and didn't really have time to do the usual prep for the show, so it's sort of been a bit more quickly put together. I hope it's as good show for you as always, and I hope you all enjoy it as always. But apologies, it's a bit more... I guess it's a bit more rushed into the truth of it, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, that is the situation with Jack Harrison. As I said, let's get into some of comments. Evening, pal. Let's get him off the wage bill as much as anything. Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. It's really annoying that I can't see the live chat. I must admit, it's really annoying. I'm having to sort of check my phone. Maybe I'll put my phone up against my microphone. I might be able to see it a bit better. No, I don't know. Reading comments might be a bit of a tricky one this episode. But yeah, as I said, with Jack Harrison, for me, is one that you just have to get off the wage bill probably, and obviously that would hopefully allow Leeds United to bring a few players in January as well, which would be nice. Yeah. Anyway, that's the Jack Harrison story in as much detail as I massively want to give about it, in truth. Moving on, anyway, to Axel Disasi. Now, he was called at Villa Axel Disaster. Hopefully, if we did sign him, he wouldn't be a disaster for us. My honest feeling with Disasi, and I've got to be honest, this has been linked by Football Insider, so potentially a bit hit and miss, but Football Insider do get quite a bit right, depending on who's reported on it. But my actual feeling with Disasi is that, and I've always thought this, he's actually got all the attributes of a really top centre-back. He's strong, he's quick, he's powerful, he's good in the air. He's got everything, in my opinion. I don't even think he's that bad on the ball, personally. I know some people have always questioned how good he is on the ball. I've always thought he's quite decent, actually, on the ball. The question has always been with Disasi is that he's got a mistake in him. He's got this disastrous tendency in a game where he can completely do something totally ridiculous and cost you a goal. And I think that is the worry, that if Leeds United signed him, that you'd get that. But on majority of games, when he's playing in most games, you actually look at him and think that if he don't make a mistake, he's probably going to have a really good game, because especially on a physical basis, he has genuinely got all the attributes. He's just got that sort of bozo moment in him, which is not particularly what you want in a centre-back, especially in such an important position on the pitch, number one, and also on a part of the pitch where if they make a mistake, naturally, being close to the goal, it usually leads to a goal. So, as I said, I'm sort of... As a backup option, as a centre-back, we're not going to be expecting someone brilliant in January anyway, in my personal opinion. Someone, as I said, to come in as a backup to what we already have. I don't hate this idea. I really don't. And as I said, I think this will probably be unpopular in the chat if I was to guess. But personally, as someone who has watched Disasi quite a bit, in my opinion, yes, he's got a few problems in his game, as I said, in terms of this disastrous tendency that he's got. But I mean, most games he's not going to make a howling mistake. And as I said, when he doesn't make a mistake, in my opinion, I think he's actually quite a good player, if I'm being honest. I do. As I said, I think he's got a lot of the attributes you need. And on his best, I think you could, if he has a really good time of it to now to the end of the season and doesn't make loads of mistakes, you could look at it and go, wow, he's a fantastic centre-back. And as I said, I think when he doesn't make a mistake, that's what a lot of people think. But yeah, that is kind of the situation around Axel Disasi. It probably would be a loan as well if it was going to happen. I think Chelsea obviously want to get him off the books now. He had that loan obviously at Villa this time last season, didn't go particularly well, but they were trying to adopt him in a right-back role. He isn't a right-back. He's a centre-back completely by trade. And actually in a back three centre-back situation, like when you look at the best of Disasi beforehand, it was under Thomas Tuchel and he was in that sort of back three system. That's what he was signed for. And as I said, we play a back three system. So in that setting, it kind of works. Let's read a few more your guys' comments. And apologies as I keep looking down. I'm literally looking through my phone comments here. There's better quality than Disasi. It's going to be the loan system. January might benefit us. Yeah, as I said, for me, the thing is with Disasi is that do I want to pay 20 to 30 million pounds for him? Absolutely not. But as someone who can do a job for the loans until the end of the season, he's probably someone that probably could do a job for Leeds United. And yeah, I'm not like, there's some signs we look at and I'm like, absolutely not. He's probably not one of them, if I'm being honest. All leads that way as well, says Day. Not as bad. Not bad if we're sitting deep. Good defender and good in the air. Horrifically slow, however. Do you think? I've never thought Disasi's that slow, actually. Maybe I've characterised him wrong there. When I've always watched Disasi, I've never felt... I've always said it's the mental side of the game that lets him down as opposed to his physical attributes. I've always felt in a physical standpoint, as I said, his pace, his strength, his power. He's 6'3". He's also got quite a big build. Like you look at Meslier and he was like 6'7", but he looked like we're 4'4" with how skinny he was. Disasi's not like that. He's got a big sturdy build. As I said, from set pieces as well, he's a real threat as well. I think he scored a few goals at Chelsea from set pieces. So I don't mind him. I think he's... Look, I don't think he's brilliant, but I think he's okay. Could do a job. And that probably moves us on to the situation with Joe Rodon. I haven't got a photo of Joe Rodon. I kind of forgot to do that, if I'm being honest. But where the Joe Rodon situation, I think, is one of definite positivity. Joe Rodon has been, when he did that injury, I obviously came on this weekend, we talked a bit about it, we said he's going to need the scan, but we were hoping, all of us were hoping really, that it wasn't going to be too severe an injury. And I think from what we're hearing, and obviously from what Daniel Farke said from the lion's mouth himself, if you will, I actually think that this is probably the best case scenario. I think 3 weeks is not so bad. He's obviously going to miss quite a few games now, but from what I saw in the way his ankle sort of bent like it did, usually for me, you're looking at ankle damage there and ligament damage. And the fact he's managed to get through it with just really bad bruising and a lot of ligament damage has got to be a huge positive for us. And we know how important Joe Rodon is. And we know how, to be honest, the lack of injuries that he also picks up. And I think that if that was other players who are more accustomed to an injury, I think they get injured doing that motion because it's such a bad motion. But Joe Rodon's body seems to be able to sort of deal with the hits and bumps that he gets in games, which is why obviously he's played for so many games back-to-back for us. But I don't think this is that bad news. And I think when we're looking at a transfer market situation again, when we're looking at probably the Disasi transfer, the reason Disasi, again, probably not the end of the world is because Joe Rodon would be your starting centre-back. Then you'd have Biol's your starting middle centre-back. And then you'd obviously have Pascal Struijk as your starting left-footed centre-back. And as I said, Disasi then could just fit in when he needs to do now and then. And as I said, this is for me a huge positive because, as I said, I was worried that we were going to hear midweek a season ender. And as I said, obviously there's been really standout performances in the last few weeks by Ethan Ampadu's and Stack, but we can't underestimate the importance of a Joe Rodon for Leeds United. I think because Joe Rodon plays every game and he's never out, we never see the downside of him not being involved in the team. And obviously he came off at the weekend and actually we probably got better without him in the team. But I don't think that's a sign of Joe Rodon at all. I thought it was more the system change that improved on. Joe Rodon's for me our best centre back in my personal opinion, and as I said, he's a warrior back there, and he very rarely ever makes mistakes, which is a huge compliment as a centre back. So yeah, this is just really good news for Leeds United, truthfully. Should be captain for me, Rodon says Day. Potentially, yeah, potentially. I think Ampadu for me is definitely the captain. And I was literally at the table talking before I did this show, my dad and brother, and we were talking about the impact of Ethan Ampadu and sort of the price that you'd probably take for Ethan Ampadu at this moment. And it would be a lot for me to want to sell Ampadu. I think you'd have to be a ridiculous fee just because I think he's so important to this Leeds United team in everything that he does. But Joe Rodon's for me is probably one of them as well, where he's probably the second leader in the team. And I think we've got quite a nice spine in terms of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, in terms of Stack, in terms of Ampadu, and then in terms of like Joe Rodon at the back. I think that's a really nice spine. I think some of the reasons we've been doing so well recently is probably down to them players, in my opinion. 3 weeks is a good do. Rodon might come back stronger. Yeah, I agree. I actually think sometimes when we talk about injured players, we always go, oh, it's a shame we're missing them and etc. But Joe Rodon has played so much football for Leeds United over the last sort of 18 months since he's been here, or even longer. He's been here for 2.5 years now, hasn't he? So more like sort of what's that? Another year on top of it. 28 months or whatever he's been here for. I thought more like 30 months probably. But he's played so much football since he's been here. Actually not playing in the team for a few weeks might do him a bit of good in terms of a mental standpoint, because yes, you get physical fatigue, but you also get mental fatigue, and the constant playing of games over and over again, which he obviously has done recently. I think probably it might do him good. And yes, as you said, he might come back. He might come back the better player actually. So let's hope that's the case anyway. Bornau has been a massive waste of money. Who and what did they see in him went to go sign him? Truthfully, I've seen a lot of this, and Darren's talking about it again. I think it's an interesting point regarding Bornau, and obviously Cologne are linked with Bornau as well. We haven't really covered it on the channel, maybe should have done. I've always felt Bornau slightly unlucky, I must admit, because the thing with Bornau is that he hasn't really ever had any time for Leeds United. I've always said that Sheffield Wednesday game wasn't a real good game to measure him on either, because yes, obviously he didn't play well in that Sheffield Wednesday game, but truthfully nobody did. And also we're not going to play any game like that at all for the rest of the season, where we've got like 80% of the ball like we had in it. They're nothing like a Premier League opponent in any way, shape or form. It was almost like a pre-season game. And yes, as I said, we want players to play well in every game, but he wasn't tested in terms of defensive capacity pretty much at all in that game. So I always felt that was quite a harsh thing to go off, but it's just quite clear to me that Daniel Farke doesn't fancy him. Maybe he did want to change system in the most recent game, but I think Liverpool will say a lot. As I said, we're going to talk more about Liverpool and how we should line up for Liverpool tomorrow. But if for me, the best system to play against Liverpool is a 5-back. I think we need to go back to the 5-back approach. And if Rodon was fit, obviously that would make a lot of sense. The interesting thing for me will be, does he play a 4-back against Liverpool, which I don't think he'd want to do if we had Joe Rodon. And if that's the case, I think Bornau's career at Leeds United is pretty much over, because he obviously at that point doesn't fancy him. Potentially against Sunderland, we wanted to change system anyway, and it was fine, and we weren't actually doing that well in a 5. So maybe that would made sense. But as I said, Liverpool for me is so obvious that we should be playing a back 5 in my personal opinion. And I think Farke, as I said, would want to play a back 5 in that particular game. If he doesn't play in that game, Bornau at centre back, in the back 3, because he's obviously the one that's got the most obvious nearest attributes to a Joe Rodon. I don't really see a future for the football club, which is a shame. And also, why are we buying him if he's not going to play at all? I just think we should rest DCL against Liverpool. He's obviously going to take it seriously, being ex-Everton. Yes, I agree with you, potentially. But I'm not, as I said, I want to talk about this a bit more tomorrow, because I do want to get your guys' takes on should we rest or not. I've seen a lot of people saying we should rest. I've seen a lot saying we shouldn't. I'm still on the fence of it, because I actually think Liverpool are not the beast that they were at one point. and this is kind of a conversation for tomorrow, but they're not really, they're not quite the team they were. And I've seen a lot of people actually predicting Leeds United potentially to get something in this game because we're on great form at this moment and they're very vulnerable at this moment. Sunderland went there quite recently and got a 1-1 draw. I think Leeds United at full strength could go to Anfield and get something, and that people might be biased or whatever, and that's absolutely fine. But that's my genuine opinion. Wolves were very unlucky not to get something at the weekend and actually battered them in the second half. So as I said, for me, Leeds United. Do you want to write it off when it's not a full-on write-off game? Like, if we're playing Arsenal away, maybe, but Liverpool are not Arsenal at this moment. Should be a good captain. 3 weeks is good for a week. We need a centre-back. Don't want Ampadu playing in the back anyway. Yeah, I do agree with that. We need a centre-back, and I think that's why the Disasi links have come. Anyway, bit of a short show today, but obviously the big news today as well, which we haven't covered, which we can't do, is that West Ham play against Brighton this evening. I've got to be honest, people, I haven't got a particularly good feeling about this one. I'm expecting West Ham to get something, maybe even 3 tonight. I'd probably take a draw right now if you snap my hands off with it. I don't want to talk too much about it because obviously a lot of people watching this will have already seen the result. But let's hope that Leeds United can come out on the better side of that, which we will talk again a bit about tomorrow as well. But we can't do it now because we don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, thanks all for watching as always, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll go early again. We'll go about 6 o'clock. I'm not playing golf tomorrow, thankfully, because I was absolutely hopeless anyway today. I don't know why I bothered playing. I basically didn't play golf anyway. But yeah, thanks all for watching, as always. And I shall see you tomorrow for some more Leeds United conversation. And obviously, we'll talk a bit about Liverpool versus Leeds United. See you then, everybody. And bye.